Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We hope you're keeping very, very safe and well. Thank you ever so much for joining us as we provide to you the big match preview for Tottenham Hotspur's trip to the King Power Stadium to face Leicester City to come on Saturday. Now, Spurs being Spurs, just when you think there's no crisis around the corner, everything is going good and well. We had the news earlier today. This will be obviously for a morning commute. This will be yesterday for you guys that Hugo Lloris will be out for what looks like between 6 to 8 weeks with an injury. So, look, in terms of content, Spurs, they always give us something to talk about. So quite literally, that will probably be where to start the show. But if you're listening to us for the first time, you can find us on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. We're, of course, on Twitter at Last Word on Spurs. We're on Facebook and Instagram too. And we are bringing to you free, fresh debutants to the Last Word on Spurs. Who says we don't have a change up and rotation on here? We always try and have a rotation. Joining us, making his debut tonight, we've got alongside us here, we've got live score sports writer, Mitch Fretton. Mitch, how are you, my friend? You well?
I reckon. Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to chatting a bit of Spurs over the next hour or so. Should be fun.
Yeah, absolutely, Mitch. It was going to be a really, really positive show, but naturally with Spurs being Spurs, there's always something that seems to come in between just the club at the moment and what is going on. So looking forward to discussing that with you. Joining Mitch tonight up on the panel as well, we've got BBC Radio 1 presenter Jess Iszatt making a debut. Jess, how are you? Lovely to have you on Last One on Spurs.
I'm literally, I'm feeling very flattered right about now. Usually I'm talking music and now I've got my Spurs shirt on and we're chatting football.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, you could argue at the moment, Jess, a couple of weeks ago, no one would be seen dead in a Spurs shirt. And quite frankly, now after a win that we've had on, obviously, the weekend, everyone's bringing them back out again. So that tells you where the mood is right now. So we're looking forward to chatting all things with Spurs with you.
I'm glad me and Pat aren't clashing as well, actually.
Well, this is the thing. I know these guys did not chat. I don't think they chatted before. They might well have done, but we've seemed to have got a couple of people wearing the alternative away shirts, repping them tonight. Daniel Levy will be so proud. Joining Jess, Mitch, we've got the brilliant YouTuber. You might see him a lot on the Football Terrace, repping Tottenham, and rightly so. We've got the brilliant Patrick Tyrant joining us. Pat, loads to have you on to make your debut. How are you?
Honoured and privileged to be here, and like Jess is saying, we're all like rocking off, our shirts and stuff. So yeah, no offense, Jess, but I think this one's a bit nicer than your one. So
look, this one gets a bad rep, which is actually why I wore it. I had to check it wasn't on backwards, so it's a weird fit.
Yeah, I'm not sure about it. I'm still not sure about it.
Maybe by the end.
Maybe by the end. But the thing at the moment is you don't mind wearing a Spurs shirt, given the form that we saw at the weekend. If we carry on like that, everyone will be back in their Spurs shirts, fingers crossed. But just a reminder, if you do need one, that we are absolutely delighted to be sponsored by the Beavertown Corner Pin. That is the Beavertown bang opposite our South Stand. Now, look, we're nearly back underway for, the home win away features, of course, at Beavertown Brewery. So what I would say is keep an eye on their website for all the information about all their latest home win away fixtures. You can check that out by going to beavertownbrewery.co.uk. But we have to start with, if we can, the breaking news from earlier as we record this on the Wednesday, which is Hugo Lloris is going to be out for Spurs for 6 to 8 weeks as he suffered a knee injury in the 1-0 victory against Man City, which I think many are probably asking how this even injury came about. Mitch, coming around to you, it's a really disappointing blow. I mean, we acknowledge that Lloris hasn't been at his best this season, but it's going to take now a big Fraser Forster to step up for us, Mitch. What do you make of it?
Yeah, look, I mean, Lloris, whether he's been at his best over the last few months or not is of course a big debate amongst the fans. But at the end of the day, we're losing a presence in the dressing room as well. 6 to 8 weeks is a long time in football. You're looking at sort of towards April time by the time he's coming back for us, and that's our captain that's out. So Fraser Forster, for me personally, I think he can come in and do a decent enough job. But I've always stuck by the sort of idea that Lloris is an excellent goalkeeper and he's got us out of a lot of sticky situations in the past. And I think, although I like Fraser, I think is a brilliant guy and a decent enough backup keeper, we will miss Hugo for the next few games. And, people have been slating him for the last few weeks and months. And yes, he's made a fair few mistakes this season, but it's not until he's out of the team and not playing that you then see what he actually brings in value to the squad. So yeah, it's a big blow. And like I said, that's our captain. We're losing. Obviously, Kane's a very able replacement, but it'll be a blow to the lads. But no letting up in the Premier League, and we're within touch and distance of those Champions League places again. So we need to just pick it up and hope Fraser Forster can do a good enough job over the next couple of months.
Yeah, absolutely. The weird thing is, it's actually come out of nowhere. Tick has asked the question here, did he injure himself jumping on Kane? I mean, as far as what we've been told in terms of a journalistic perspective is that this injury occurred at full time, at some point around full time. I mean, just coming around to you, look, I mean, Lloris, to be fair, he's probably found it his most difficult season in terms of the critics that he's faced. How big a blow do you think it is, Jess, losing Lloris at this point in the season?
It's one of those things because we've obviously come off the back of a huge win as well. I imagine that maybe he hurt himself probably celebrating, which is obviously so ironic, isn't it? But yeah, it's not just that. It's like you'd never sub a goalie. So to have to adapt, and this last minute as well with a different goalie, forgive me, I actually don't know much about Forster at all, but like I'm a big fan of Lloris as well. And I think that he's always had everyone's back. He's always so vocal as well. Obviously our captain too. So I don't know. It doesn't seem that good, does it?
No, we will come on shortly discussing Forster and how we feel he's going to fare between the six, because it might be for quite a bit of a period he will be there. Pat, coming around to you, there has been links, let's say, on this Wednesday evening that Spurs are eyeing up potentially Ben Forster. I mean, it is quite ironic that the guy's a podcaster now in himself, really. And I think that's more of an emergency cover in the situation where, of course, there would be then an injury to Forster, which, I mean, given Spurs' track record of injuries, you wouldn't put anything past them. What do you make of that, Pat? And also, how much do you think Spurs are going to struggle without Hugo Lloris in between the sticks, given the nature of the amount of stick he has had this season?
Yeah, you know what? It is a really sticky one because, sometimes they say be careful what you wish for. And a lot of us were slating Lloris. He's probably had his worst season for us. I've always loved him. For me, he's been a world-class goalkeeper. But if we're all being honest, this season looks almost like a season too much for him. He's made comical mistakes and big errors in big games. Against Aston Villa, we were cruising 0-0, in control of the game, and he made a howler. They ended up winning 2-0. Against Arsenal as well, even though he was under a bit of pressure, that kind of cross shot from Saka that he ended up bundling into the goal, another big mistake. And he's just made mistake after mistake. I think he's made the most errors leading to goals in the whole of the Premier League this year. So he hasn't been at his best, but like Mitch is saying, he is such a good shot stopper and keeper. There are moments where he will win us games or keep us in games. Fraser Forster is a good goalkeeper, and to be fair, he's a good backup keeper. Last year, Southampton versus Arsenal, when Southampton beat Arsenal 1-0, which is a game no one expected Southampton to win. Fraser Forster saved like 10 or 11 shots, point blank shots from Saka and other things. So we know he's a good keeper. When he's deputised and come in, he's done well. So he gives me a bit more confidence than our previous backup keepers like Vorm, Stellini, Joe Hart. So, I am a bit worried, I can't lie, but also at the same time, when he has played for us, he's played well. So, we've got we're riding a good wave. Ironically, Hugo Lloris kept 2 clean sheets in a row, which is, when's the last time he said that? And then he gets injured. So, got to take the rough with the smooth, but I think we'll be all right.
Yeah, I mean, just coming back around to you, Mitch, from what we understand in terms of fixtures, he's going to miss. He definitely is going to miss that AC Milan first leg. You'd argue he could also miss the second leg as well, but also big Premier League matches, of course. Leicester this weekend, West Ham, Chelsea, Wolves, Forest. Also, you'd argue that cup clash against Sheffield United, where you may have said he might not play. But I think when you consider the fact that a lot of Spurs fans have showed a lot of negativity towards Lloris, and I would say, almost rightly so. I think when you look at the number of high-profile errors he's made, Arsenal and Aston Villa, we're now going to realistically see if we're going to keep typing, writing, saying, Lloris would have saved that, Lloris would have saved that. So do you back Forster to be able to obviously be between the sticks for such a big amount of games coming up here for Tottenham, a huge, crucial part of the season?
I do. I mean, he was a starter or a regular player for Southampton last season in the Premier League. So he's obviously accustomed to the standards in the top flight. And like I said before, he's more than good enough. The only issue, of course, is his lack of match fitness and I guess lack of game time over the course of this season at Spurs. But he would have known very well when he signed in the summer that he was coming to play second fiddle and backup, and he had to be prepared for that. Hugo's obviously not young himself, and he suffered with a few injuries in the past, not too many, but Forster would have had to been prepared for something like this to happen, and hopefully he'll just be able to seamlessly slot in, and hopefully everyone playing in front of him from the defence and midfield attack can just carry on playing how they have been playing over the last few weeks, which has been much better. I'm sure you guys agree with that as well. And, you know, I think we'll be able to get by perfectly fine in the games, you know, like this weekend. It doesn't frighten me too much that he's going to be in goal. It's more the big ones, the AC Milan games are the concerns. You know, Hugo Lloris has won the World Cup. He's captained his country to World Cup, played in finals, played in a Champions League final as well. You want him, regardless of his form, in those games. So it's about whether Forster can handle it in those sorts of games that he only really ever played for Celtic. The Barcelona game comes to mind where he had an absolute blinder. So let's just hope that we can get that version of him and just pull through while Lloris is out.
Yeah, to be fair, just quickly, to be fair for Forster, this is such a good opportunity, because when do you get an opportunity like this to actually really show over a number of games how you can do and how you can really perform?
Yeah, I massively agree with that. I mean, look, I think Forster will know, of course, he's been signed as the backup goalkeeper. But like you said there, Jess, he's going to get the opportunity now of a consistent period to play. And I think the argument is that ultimately for any goalkeeper, it is very hard when you're going to be coming in and out the team. He is now going to get a consistent run. Do you think, Jess, you know, it does, I mean, as fans, some of us will be the same ones that are criticising Lloris now, saying, typical, we've lost him at such a big period. Do you think this period's going to show us just how much we may miss Lloris, or do you back Forster to be able to do the job in what is now, you'd say, a hugely pivotal point in Spurs' season, where the games we've got coming up are going to define the season? You know, arguably the next 5 or 6 Premier League fixtures are going to arguably see if Spurs can continue this top 4 run. Obviously, Champions League, FA Cup. I mean, the argument is when Lloris comes back, it could look very different this season. What do you make of it?
I'm going to echo what Mitch says, and I think that he can do a good job. I think a real issue that I've noticed within the Spurs camp generally is people are really, really quick to be quite negative and jump critically on players, and just like things like with Royale, for example, I feel like people can be so quick to be really, really judgmental rather than like actually put good energy into the atmosphere. I'm like such a huge believer in bigging up and creating a good atmosphere, positive atmosphere. Like, he hasn't even started yet, and I bet some people are already critiquing him and how he might perform. Like, if he doesn't have the best first performance, like, people will be really, really quick to jump on it. But I actually think that if we put our energy into like actually positively reinforcing and encouraging, I genuinely think, as someone who like plays a lot of sport and has a lot of passion in sport, I think that if you have your fans behind you, that's why home games are so important, because you have your fans behind you. Nowadays, we have online. Like, you think that the players don't see it. Yeah, they might not see your individual words, but they know the general vibe, whether it's positive or negative.
Yeah, no, I massively agree. And look, you say that, Jess. I know a lot of the first team around the squad, they do listen and watch Last Word on Spurs, and I think that's even again not us for trying to be responsible for what we say. We're conscious that again, social media has a massive impact on those players, and the argument is that it's being run by their media teams. There is obviously a natural element to that, but believe me, the players, coaching staff, and around the first team, they see everything. So, again, it's almost that fact that you've got to be a little bit, wary of what you do say does get back to the players. And I think the sad thing is we've kind of touched upon is that, you've seen Emerson Royale have a wonderful game at the weekend. And, before that, he had to restrict his comments on Instagram. I think it's only what we've seen the last few days that he's actually now lifted that and allowed comments to come back through. And again, it just shows you the way football is, that, as players, everyone judges and they're living the most perfect life. But, when you're getting critiqued game by game, match by match, week by week, there you go. It is really, really tough. I mean,
Pat, you say the most perfect life, though, but like, they're playing this as their passion, but it's also their job. Absolutely. And it has a shelf life as well. So if people are booing you off the pitch, I'm sorry, but that is, I think, the most disgusting behavior. Imagine if that was you. And then, but you also still got picked. It's not you who picks yourself. Obviously, you've got to back yourself, but you need the team, you need the fans, you need your coach, you need everyone to be backing you.
Agree. And lots of people agree with you in the comments there, Jess. Lots of people are agreeing. Pat, there'll be another argument that ultimately Spurs should never have been in this position because they maybe should have upgraded Lloris's position, a season or two ago. Where do you sit on that for you, Pat? Should we have even been in this situation, or is it just unfortunate timing that Lloris has got injured at a point in the season where Spurs have ultimately got a lot to play for and in a crucial run of fixtures.
Yeah, it's unfortunate timing, to be fair, because Lloris for me has been a top keeper for for a long time. I know there's been a rapid decline this year, but last season he was fantastic. The season before that he was fantastic. So you can never tell. I mean, he's 36, so at some point he is going to drop off. But we wouldn't have foresaw it to be this rapid this season. But saying that, the last 2 games he has looked really good. It's just a shame because it is literally business end of the season. And then when I looked at it, 6 to 8 weeks, 6 weeks takes you to essentially 22nd of March. 8 weeks takes you to the 5th of April. So like you said, he's literally missed the whole chunk of the season.
Yep.
I'm not as worried. I believe I agree with what Jess is saying. And I don't think it's as big as a problem as what people are making it out to be. As we know, Twitter is quite a cesspool sometimes and people are so negative on there. But Fraser Forster has looked good whenever he's played for us. And he is a good goalkeeper. I believe that when I saw him at Southampton, like Mitch is saying, at Celtic. So it's time for him to step up and earn his corn. He's a good keeper. He's not at Lloris's level, but at the end of the day, he's probably better at commanding his box than Lloris, because Lloris is quite a small goalkeeper and hasn't been the best at crosses and commanding his 6-yard box. And his distribution has to be better than Lloris's, because let's be honest, Lloris's distribution is awful. So there are positives in there. And at the end of the day, we just got to get behind the team, man. We've got enough good players and a world-class coach. We should be winning most of our games. So, of course, the reason why I'm a bit worried is because Lloris is such a mainstay in our team, and he's literally been there for 8 or 9 years, captain, mainstay.
Whatever you think about him, Whatever you think about him, Pat, is you're going to say there, look, he's a leader. You know, he's a massive, massive voice in that changing room, as we saw from the All or Nothing documentary. So I can't see any way in which there is a positive to this. I mean, look, the argument will be, look, Forster will get a run of games, but on the other hand, you're missing somebody there that, you know, is a leader. He's a warrior 100%. On the field. And, you know, ultimately now, we are going to see a test of just exactly how Spurs are going to cope without impact.
Yeah, you're no mug if you're captain for Spurs. You're one of the best teams in the world. I know people might laugh and banter us. We're definitely one of the best teams in the Premier League and have been for a while. And he's been captain of France for how long? And obviously, they're one of the best teams in the world. And he also led them to a World Cup. So the guy is a good player. He is a leader, like you're saying, Ricky. Yep. It is a shame. It's such a shock because it literally came out of nowhere. I just literally picked up my phone and saw Lloris out for 6 to 8 weeks. And then I had to double check and triple check it because I was like, is this a wind up? So it just literally happened out of nowhere. I was like, when did he even get injured? So, yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
Yeah, it is indeed. Look, we'll keep an eye on how things are. But that's later at Tottenham. Hugo Lloris out for looks like a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks. If it is up to 8 weeks, it will take him until the next international break to get back, where Spurs face a rejuvenated Everton, of course, under Sean Dyche. So we'll see what happens right there. What we are going to do is we are going to turn our attention slightly to Antonio Conte, who, what we understand, coming over to you, Mitch, is flying back to England from Italy. That was earlier on the Wednesday after undergoing surgery last week. Now, of course, he was diagnosed with, I'm actually going to butcher this, so please forgive me. I'm going to go with clositis. Clositis. I've probably got that completely wrong. But obviously, in simplistic terms, he had his gallbladder removed. He did remain on the penicillin for a few days and expect to fly back today. Early indications do suggest, Mitch, that there's hope he'll be back in the dugout for Leicester on Saturday. How important would it be, Mitch, to have him back, or do you back Stellini, who, from my understanding, I think he's managed 5 games in total, 2 at Spurs, the 3 at Inter. He's got a 100% record. So are we urging Antonio back?
Yeah, I mean, I love Stellini. I think he's a hell of a character, and you know, he speaks his mind, and I think he's a lot more upfront than Antonio. But I mean, yeah, having Conte back on the touchline for Saturday would be huge. I mean, what a man! And you know, there are a lot of people out there at the moment questioning his commitment to the club and whether he's going to stay and stuff. But if he finds himself back in the technical area at the weekend, that sort of puts that all to bed, doesn't it? Because he could stay in Italy for longer if he wanted to. He could milk his operation and get as much best red as he wants, as much as the doctors recommend. But here we go. What is it? Just over a week later, he could be back on the sidelines for us. So it'll be huge. And I think it will sort of almost counter the Lloris injury. You know, you lose an influential figure, but you gain another one back. And I think it would just give him a boost ahead of the game, and just having his presence and obviously his knowledge around the game would be massive. And then, you know, it'd hopefully help us pick up 3 points, which is the main objective.
Yeah, I mean, Jess, come over to you. We obviously know on Instagram he put a message on there saying the operation went well and he could not wait to get back on the pitch with the team. What's your view on it, Jess? Are you hurrying Antonio Conte back, or are you not you're not gutted if it is Stellini still in charge, given this managerial record he seems to have.
I was going to say with Stellini's record, it's like, you know what, just like don't break it. And also, actually, I saw someone comment, did Royale play better because he didn't have Conte on his back?
Well, it's
I don't really know.
It's an interesting point, Jess, because I mean, one thing we did notice, obviously, and I don't think there's a massive difference, but Conte literally, as you kind of alluded to there, he almost coaches the players during
We want
the game.
a Conte cam. That's what I want. That's all I want. I wouldn't
Conte.
actually even mind just watching him like on the corner of the screen. It's so entertaining.
Yeah.
I guess it depends, because if you're a player that likes that, you all you want to think about is like your own game, and then you've got someone telling you like what's what. Great. If you get confused by someone doing that, or perhaps it's gonna ruin your performance because you hate someone micromanaging your game, then potentially that's not as good. It can't work for everyone, surely.
No,
surely. Everyone's different, and so I don't know, but I think it would be a great confidence boost. Like, we're all loving him at the minute. I feel like the team kind of pulled together for it. I feel like it united everyone at the weekend, like understanding why he was so kind of not as animated as he had been in the past, and it kind of just relieved that pressure. So I think him coming back, especially so soon, would show his passion, show that he really cares, and kind of bring back people together again. And again, like you said, Mitch, with Lloris like not being there and being a big voice, then having Conte return instead of having, for example, like someone like Harry having to step up, I think it just means that people can play their games the way they want to.
Yeah, lots of love for you guys tonight. I must say, lots of love. So, I mean, I will put it down to the fact you guys are lovely, and the fact Spurs have won a game. Believe me, it's been. Pat will know this on the football terrace. It has been a cesspit at times on socials with Tottenham. I must just say, Pat, bringing you in there on Conte. I mean, I think the most funniest thing is Conte's name was being sung so much, and he wasn't even at the bloody game. I mean, I think again, it's a reminder that at times the football has been really difficult to watch. I mean, we've been playing fairly rigid tactics, and I don't know what you think, Pat, just in terms of, the difference having Conte on the touchline to not having on the touchline. I mean, I think Jess makes a wonderful point there that, Conte does almost micromanage the players from that touchline. But again, I have to say that I felt with Stellini at the weekend, he was just as, a ball of energy on the touchline. You could see he was kicking, he was, really was fist pumping every ball. Again, massively, massively passionate. You'd imagine that, again, I think we've heard from Ali Gold that there was a lot of talk beforehand with both Stellini and Conte about how they wanted to set the team up. So what do you think, Pat, for you? How much of a difference will it be having Conte back on that touchline, potentially for Leicester?
With all due respect, and I don't want to sound cheeky here, Leicester, 14th in the league, I think we can probably do without Conte in that game. The thing is, you don't want to rush Conte back. He has undergone a major surgery. And, with all due respect, it's Leicester. We should be able to beat Leicester without Conte being there. You saw how he turned up against Man City, looked really good. I know we were behind the ball a lot, but we were a lot braver out of possession. We pushed higher. You saw Eric Dyer, Højbjerg, and even Romero counter-pressing and also becoming an extra man. Hence how we even got the ball, where Højbjerg stole it off, the wayward pass from Rodri, slid the ball into Harry Kane. And you kind of want to see Stellini doing that again. So, of course, I'd love Conte to be back. We love him. As you hear, everyone that watches the games or goes to the stadium, we sing his name throughout the 90 minutes. But also at the same time, I understand he's gone through a massive surgery, so we don't want to rush him back if he's not really needed to be back. And we should be able to beat Leicester without Conte being there. But of course, if he is back, it's a welcome boost. But I want him to be fit and healthy first. I think his health comes first. And we, sometimes as football fans, we're a bit selfish. We always want to rush players back. We always want, we need to also look at what's best for him long term.
Absolutely. Go on, Jess, go for it.
Do you think that it was just Stellini who decided that they were going to play a more attacking sort of game? Because surely him and Conte talk to each other.
That's a good question, but
absolutely.
we haven't seen us play like that in a long time. So I'm like, was it Stellini? Was it a bit of both? I don't know. So it's a really good question.
What we had some, again, Ali Gold, friend of the show. I mean, I think he put it out there that there was, coming over to you, Mitch, and almost a big meeting beforehand where they were obviously designating tactics and how that game was going to work out. I mean, the argument you could say that, when you look at the possession of that game at one point, I think it was 70-30 in City's favour. So again, the argument would be that would Spurs or would us fans accept that at home against any other side? You probably wouldn't. But I think, again, the fact of the matter is there was a real intensity to our play, Mitch, where we were actually going forward, looking to take the game to the opposition. And I think what also massively helps, Mitch, is that we scored after 15 minutes. And given the fact that Spurs kept giving teams a 2-0 start, during a massive point this season, it was nice to score early. And that immediately got the fans on side rather than had that game been 0-0 for 60, 70 minutes. I think like we've seen at home, can be quite a difficult atmosphere to play there, Mitch. We obviously, before the City game, we lost 4 out of our last 5. So what do you make of Conte and the brand of football? I mean, is it going to improve or is that a one-off for you against City?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of variables that were in our favour on Sunday. I think all of us are aware of that. City's incredibly poor record at our place. The whole Conte not being there is going to amp up the atmosphere anyway. Everyone's wishing him well, everyone's wanting to get behind the team, no matter what's going on, sort of on the pitch or behind the scenes. You've got a new signing that's come into the squad that people are maybe getting a bit excited to see. So I think there were a lot of factors that just amped up the whole atmosphere and the team in general on Sunday. And we always have a good game against Manchester City. It's either, we race ahead early or we get absolutely pummeled. So, going ahead early in a game like that suited our style of play and our game plan. And there are very, very few teams in the world that can go toe-to-toe with the way that City play and dominate the ball more than them and press them for an entire game. It's almost impossible. And more often than not, they're going to win out. So I personally have no issues with how Conte wants to play football at Spurs. I'm very much of the mindset of just win the games. I was like it under Mourinho, and I'm like it now with Conte. And I just think that he's a manager that you need to back. And I know people have said this 1,000,001 times, but you've got to give him time. I don't think we have still seen the final product of an Antonio Conte Spurs team yet. I think we saw glimpses of it at the weekend and he wasn't even on the touchline. But I just feel like he's slowly starting to get there. We brought in Pedro Porro, who just sounds like he's going to be the perfect wing back in his system. Give him the summer to bring maybe a couple of centre-backs and a goalkeeper in, and just then give him next season as well to see what he can do, because it's just been evident over so many years at Chelsea and Inter Milan and Juventus as well that he is an incredibly good coach, and he can adapt his style of play if he has to go on the front foot and dominate a weaker opposition. We can do that, and we've seen that with Spurs as well. Or if we need to take a step back against some of the more possession-based teams like Manchester City, like Arsenal at the moment, then we can do that as well. So yeah, I've got no issues with it, and I think that given the resources and the time and another season or so, we will see a very good Tottenham team under Antonio Conte.
It's interesting, Jess. I mean, this season especially, I think when you look at the fact of how the start has been, and you look at the back end of last season where Spurs finished in the top 4, I think a lot of us went into the start of this season thinking, look, Conte's had a full pre-season with the players. We're almost going to see an extension to what we saw at the second half of last season, where Spurs are going to be a lot more flamboyant, a lot more expressive with the ball. We've added, 5 or 6 new players. What do you make of it, Jess, for you? Are you still happy with Antonio Conte, or do you think it's coming to almost a conclusive end? What do you think?
Oh, I hope it's not coming to an end. I am a big fan of Conte.
Okay.
I agree that I don't think has had enough time, but we know what it's like with managers. They can be in and out very quickly. I was a really big fan of Poch, and I feel like lots of people were. And obviously he went fine, whatever. With Mourinho, I personally think that was awful. I think that there were loads of unseen politics behind the scenes that I actually don't, none of us will ever know. But I just think it's hilarious that that whole series came out with Mourinho, and then by the end of it, he was already gone. But I just think that maybe something with the players didn't really click. I think with Conte, maybe he's a bit more, he's obviously on it. And like I mentioned about really being on it with managing, but no one can deny his passion. So I think that is actually working. We haven't quite got there yet. I think what we saw at the weekend was a more attacking team, and everyone was more excited about that. The fact that Dyer was stepping up, and it meant that it united us as fans and it united the team. And I think if, say, we'd have gone up a few more goals and say we obviously still won, because obviously we still want to win, but if we'd have gone down a few goals, if a few had gone in, I don't think we would have even minded. I just think we want to see more exciting, like pushing forward football. This whole thing of us going down goals in the first half and then having to like claw it back in the second half is just stressful, and everyone's tired. They don't want to see it anymore. They just want to see like early goals like we did at the weekend. And we just want some more attacking football. I think that's why everyone loves Romero, because he's just in there. So we just want more exciting football, don't we?
Agreed. And
absolutely. I totally agree with that. I think there's an I'm here, guys. I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
I think we've lost Ricky a tiny bit.
Yeah, you're freezing a bit, Ricky.
You're okay. You're back.
He's got the posh background, but a bit of it.
Am I back, guys? I did a
Spurs
defensive moment. I lapsed in concentration. Pat, let's bring you in there. Sorry, Pat, you were speaking. Go for it, Pat.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, I love Conte, man. And so many people, when I'm on all these podcasts, they try and get me to turn on him because the football isn't as exciting, as expansive as it should be. But he needs time, like Jess is saying. I expected a bit of a better brand this year, I can't lie, with the signings that we brought in. But then also, if we're honest with ourselves, the defence isn't where it should be. We've had problems with the wing backs. In a Conte system, you need the wing backs to provide that creativity and push forward. Perisic on his side has been fantastic, but the right side has been a problem. Emerson was fantastic on Sunday, and that's the kind of performances we want to see from him. But going forward, he does leave a lot to be desired. So we've got Porro in now. We're all excited to see that. And as long as we can, at the end of the day, the objective this season for many a fan was top 4 in a trophy. We're still on track for that. So let's just see how it goes, man. We need to get behind Conte, get behind the team, and then see where we land. Because as much as it's been quite negative, we're still in a good place. We're still in a good position right now.
Agree. I think the one key thing that many are picking up on the fact, and we have to say it, is that, does Conte still want to be here? Whilst we obviously want the man to be here, and there's an element where we feel he's still the right man for the job. I think, again, when you take into the account that he's lost 3 close friends this year, he's also had, obviously, an operation recently. And again, we said on Sunday's show that from the outside looking in, some might think, he's lost his passion, he's lost his drive. Again, is that element what Jess said earlier, and no one really knows what's going on outside of the world of football. These guys are all human. They all have their own personal lives. They all have their own personal problems. So, look, I think we obviously just need to get to a point where we understand the plan at the end of the season. I think, again, it comes down to what we've asked for from the board, which is clear communication, the direction of the football club and the way forward. So it will be one that we'll keep an anxious eye on, and we'll have to see if Antonio is in the dugout, of course, for this weekend's game against Leicester City, which we're going to come on to in a bit more detail and preview. Next, just to bring you up to date on some news. So Spurs are understood to have missed out on a 42.5 million sponsorship deal as South Africa essentially scrapped the agreement. Again, to be honest, if there's a lot more, crux to this story, I'd get the guys' opinions on it. But from what we understand, it was reported last week that a conditional offer was made in the region of 42.5 million, which I think has seemed to have got quite a lot of traction. It's fair to say, I think there's been a lot of kick up a fuss about it, but the crux of it is, as far as we understand, that essentially that is now no longer going to go ahead, and the deal that was essentially on the table is no longer. So if there was more to this story, we'd bring it to you. But our understanding is Spurs are going to miss out on that 42.5 million sponsorship deal. I think many are intrigued to see now what is going to happen in regards to these stadium naming rights, given the fact that we know Spurs are going to, what we expect to, announce record profits from the latest annual financial figures. We know Spurs have been holding them back until after the window. There was an argument that maybe they held them back because essentially they didn't want to show their hand ahead of the January window. But again, I think be interested to see what's going to happen there. Jess, did you want to come in? You want to come in there, Jess?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I said before we went live, I was like, I've got no idea.
I've got no idea what I'm talking about. I'm going to be honest with you. But all I know is that, like Spurs, it's not going ahead. And yet another Reject FC is Tottenham. So that will not be going ahead. One man who has done some talking this week is Daniel Levy. Now, I actually got to be honest, I was quite surprised. That this wasn't given a lot more promotion and traction, given the fact that Daniel was only done, I would say, 5 interviews in the last 20 years of, being part of ENIC and managing Tottenham. So just to give some context to this, and we'll start with Pat on this. essentially Daniel was doing an interview for Premier League Stories in which he was essentially given an outline on the journey of being Spurs' chairman and the building of the stadium and the building of the actual infrastructure in and around the club. Now, I think it's fair to say Daniel was doing this interview at a time where there's a lot of spotlight on not just him, but the overall board at Spurs and whether there's enough being done in terms of the investment. Just before we come on to the interview itself, Pat, are you quite surprised that this wasn't given much of a promotion, given the timing of it kind of come out of nowhere?
Ricky, I didn't even know it was on. One of my boys, Bainesy, shout out to Alex, he literally messaged me and said, are you watching the Levy thing? It's about to start. And I was like, what Levy thing? Because Sky Sports Premier League is coming on in a couple minutes. So this was about 6:50, he messaged me. It started at 7, didn't it? So it was a 30-minute segment. It was really good, to be fair. And I'm not going to be here like slating the guy. People that know me know my stance on him. But it actually was a good interview. And it actually warmed me to him a bit more than I am as it stands. And it was good to see his thoughts and his insight. He's talking about how he's a Tottenham fan and he wants the team to do well. When the team doesn't do well, he's pissed off and it ruins his weekend. And, like he hates when Tottenham are playing rubbish football. And it made me question a few things. I'm like, really? If that's the case, then why haven't you backed the team better? And, all of that stuff. So, but it was really good to see. It was really interesting when he was talking about the South Stand and how they got the acoustics right. How, because, as you know, the South Stand is one massive stand, 17,000. There's no pillars in it, or no columns. He showed the architecture and how they managed to do that. You had the main architect talking about how Daniel Levy's a fierce negotiator, tough customer, but they had such a good relationship and they met every week to build the stadium. He spoke about Beaverton, the brewery. He spoke about a lot of stuff. So it was a really good segment, but yeah, I don't know. I'm still not sold on the guy, if I'm being honest. And, I don't want to be negative and come on here.
Pat, honestly, though, I think this is the thing that, as a channel, as a podcast, there is almost that feeling that, we are vigorously behind the board. I mean, I'd like to think we have been heavily critical said that there needs to be some form of either a change or some form of something to essentially bring the club back to where we want it to be. Because I think all of us feel there's a sense or lack of direction as to where the club is going. I think, other channels say things in different ways. I think we've always tried to be logical and balanced and fair in the approach that, look, we recognise that we've got a great stadium. We recognise we've got a great training ground, but,
we want to see on the pitch success.
Exactly. There's no point having a great training ground and great stadium if we're not going to see that, in terms of the team and being able to deliver and push on. So out of interest, Pat, where do you stand on the ball for you?
Levy out, Enoch
okay.
out. I'm sorry. And it's just like, without being negative, I understand what he's done for the team. I understand where we were before. But the argument about where we were before he stepped in, we had won more trophies before he had come in terms of now. Yes, in terms of a global brand, in terms of a more respected team, in terms of finishing in the top 4 and being a part of the established Big 6, I get all of that now. But when it comes to on-pitch success, which is what I care about, I don't care about Beyonce stadium tours. I don't care about Tyson Fury fighting here. I don't care about NFL. I don't care about Lady Gaga. I want to see Tottenham winning trophies. I want to see Harry Kane doing that. I want to see Hugo Lloris. I mean, Hugo Lloris is about to probably leave without a trophy, which is criminal for a goalkeeper of his stature. I want to see us win stuff. I want to see us be in that conversation. When you look at the fact that Leicester have won trophies, when you look at the fact that these teams that we should have definitely, we've had our chances, and it just feels like every time we've had that sliding doors moment, Levy hasn't backed the team when he should have. We all loved Pochettino. We all wanted him to get backed. He didn't. 2 transfer windows without any signings is criminal. God knows how Pochettino, when you take a step back and look at it now, you're like, how the hell did Poch finish 2nd, 3rd, 4th without being backed properly? Then you bring him Jose Mourinho, he's a win-now manager, and you don't back him. Antonio Conte is a win-now manager, and the jury's still out if he has been backed or he hasn't. For me, it was criminal that January came, we didn't get a decent centre-back. We all know Romero was world-class, but if we're looking at his options side by side, they're not good enough. And if we would have went out and just pushed the name out and got a top-quality centre-back to partner Romero, I had no doubts us finishing 3rd or 4th. Now I still think we're finishing the top 4, but it's going to be a scrap. So for me, I just feel that he just doesn't do enough. And he talks on the show about how he's a Spurs fan first and foremost. He wants to see on the pitch success. You can see from the interview that he does listen and he does hear what we're saying, because he really, without addressing it, he addresses it, if you get what I mean. But I just don't see enough. I just don't see enough, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fair. I mean, again, I've said it consistently here on Last Word on Spurs, Mitch, coming around to you, that, I've always felt going into a transfer window and then coming out of it that we're arguably always, for me, one or two players short. I never
Exactly.
feel that we're ever ready to either start the season or then to continue what we're doing in the season in January. So that's always been my biggest issue. And I've got no problem saying that and being honest in how I feel about that. But the interview itself, Mitch, Daniel Levy admitted that Spurs all they can do is give the manager the best players that they can afford in their quest to be a success on the pitch. Yeah, I mean, as we know, Spurs' last silverware come in 2008, but obviously we know we've been competing regularly in the Champions League, and of course we're going to go one step further and finally win those top honours. I mean, there has been obviously the argument that the inconsistency has plagued Spurs over the course of this campaign and several of them. Where do you stand on the board for you, Mitch, and what do you make of the interview itself?
For me, it's a difficult one, but at the same time, my opinion on Daniel Levy and the board isn't a particularly positive one. I think I completely agree with what Pat was saying. I mean, we've been on the verge of greatness so many times, and we've almost just got there, and we've sort of gone, oh, okay, that's good enough. If we get that trophy over the line, or if we finish in that particular place, then that's fine. If not, then, oh, well, think about it. Over the last sort of 5 to 7 years, we've had FA Cup semi-finals, Carabao Cup finals, Champions League finals. We've come second in the Premier League. We've given teams a run for their money. We've had so many situations where if we'd have just gone out in the summer of one of those years and just really just put our money where our mouths are and just brought in a couple of quality additions, there's no doubt on my mind that we would have picked up silverware in the last few years. We were such a good team, particularly under Pochettino. Probably the best team that I've seen in my lifetime, Tottenham-wise. And it just never has been enough. And Daniel Levy can say that he's a Spurs fan all he likes, but above everything else, he's a businessman. And he prioritises that over the footballing side of things. And I'm not saying what a club like Chelsea is doing is right, but if you wandered over to West London and sat down with Todd Bowley and spoke to him about football and talked to him and asked him what his ambitions are, and then put that interview side by side with Daniel Levy's, it would be a complete difference. Because Todd Bowley will come across and he will say, I don't care what the cost is. I don't care about all of that side of things. I'm happy to invest in the team to see them win, whether that be now or in the future. Whereas with Daniel Levy, and they come out with a statement earlier in the month saying, we've invested this month, but you haven't, and you could have done more yet again. And we obviously don't know what's going to happen over the course of the rest of the season. I would say our best shot for anything at this point in time is winning the FA Cup. Don't know whether that will happen. Hopefully it does, fingers crossed. But it's just a case of, like I said, not doing enough. And then you're biting back at the fans when they're rightfully getting upset, and the trust have done a fantastic job in trying to get answers out of the board, and they've come back with really vague and quite almost condescending answers, in my personal opinion. And coming out and saying we've invested in the women's team, we've invested in a new stadium. I'll tell you this now, and not everyone might agree with me, I would snap my fingers and swap our new stadium back to the old White Hart Lane Stadium if it meant we won a Carabao Cup, or if we won an FA Cup, or if we won that Champions League final.
100%.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, again, it's a good point you make there, Mitch. I mean, for me personally, I think if Tottenham were playing over Hackney Marshes, we wouldn't care. We'd go and watch them. I mean, it's lovely having a beautiful stadium. It's lovely having all these again wonderful concerts happening. But ultimately, if we're having to pay for that for a lack of success, is it truly worth it? I mean, Jess, just to bring you into this conversation, I know the board is one that does split so many people's opinions. I'm just going to read you Daniel's comments and coming on this, Jess. He said, I think when you're involved in football, the one thing is we all want to win. Not everyone can win. It's very, very difficult. We are not in control of what happens every time there's a game. All we can do is give the manager the best players that we can afford. Inside there is raw emotion. I'm just being respectful for the opposing team around me. If we lose, it ruins my whole weekend. If we play bad, it is even worse. If we win, it is great. What do you take from those comments, Jess? And do you believe what Daniel's saying there?
It's just so hard to believe him, isn't it? Because if you do, then great. It makes us feel like we're on the same side together. But a lot of the time, the feeling is that we're against him. And I think that's actually the problem. Like the fact that we don't believe him, the fact that he doesn't pull through with what he's saying, that he's going to do. And the fact that he clearly hasn't got on with these managers or like listens to them, like you said, Mitch, like, I don't know, I can't remember the name of the person who owns Chelsea, but the fact that you feel like even if you just sat down and had a conversation with him about football, you'd know where he was at. Whereas with Levy, it's all like very politician-like you said as well, he doesn't do many interviews. That just shows everything. It means that he doesn't even trust himself to go and like speak to people. If he really was a big fan of football, if he was with us on like our side, there'd be no problem, would there? But he clearly is on his high horse and just cares more about business. And I think that just kind of says it all, to be honest.
Listen, we've caught Todd Bowley in spaces on Twitter. We've seen Todd Bowley interacting with the fans. Like, he's actually in trenches, listening to what they say. He wants to be part. He wants to be successful. You can never imagine Levy interacting with the likes of you and I, really taking on board what we say and then relaying it back to the team. And that's the thing. And even like Mitch said, when it took so long for the trust to apply to us, and when they did, it was so condescending. It felt like we were naughty school kids that would basically ask, to go out and play, and it was raining. It was so condescending how they spoke to us. It was so cheeky. And the stuff they said, it didn't answer any questions. They spoke about investment. They spoke about this stuff that had.
I think that's a big thing, Pat, isn't it? I mean, it's almost like, what we're asking for. I don't think it's too hard. It's just almost clear communication direction of what the ambition is. I don't think that's too much to ask when arguably we pay the highest season ticket prices in the country. And arguably,
not arguably, it is.
Well,
we do.
We don't. Not arguably, you're right. We do pay the highest season ticket price in the country. Then when you look at, for example, the teams that are around us, yes, again, they're funded by, you could argue where that money comes from. But ultimately, if you're going to charge that amount, you have to then deliver the product on the pitch. That's always my argument. When you come to a point of a transfer win and you feel, that's enough, I don't think that you can't then replicate that and charge everyone the highest prices. If you're gonna do that with the team investment, then you're gonna make it balance out with the ticket prices. But I mean, look, all I would say is, from what we understand is that Daniel, from our understanding, that he's not the most flamboyant speaker. He's not that one who wants to go in front of the camera and talk every 5 minutes. I don't think we're asking for that. I think all we're after, if I'm being honest with you, is just somebody to outline the clear vision, the clear ambition of the football club, and give us a sense of direction of where the club is going. What doesn't help right now, and this is potentially maybe out of an element of control, is that Antonio Conte's contract is running out at the end of the season, and we don't know what the future holds. Now, the argument should be, should we even be in this situation? I don't think we should. We should know where we stand. And I think that in itself does frustrate fans, that we essentially do not have the answers to these questions, which I think will give us a lot more clarity. So, look, just to finish on, Daniel said, his connection to the team comes from visiting White Hart Lane for the first time as a youngster. He said, my first game was against Aston Villa. I came, my great uncle bought me. It was a long, long time ago. Ever since I've been a Spurs fan, I think it must have been about 7 or 8. The atmosphere, the intensity of White Hart Lane was something special. I used to love coming. And then in relation to chopping and changing managers since Pochettino's exit back in 2019, Levy did confess that apparently his dream is to have somebody who can be in charge of the team for a good 10 to 15 years. He said, managers know that it's just part of the game, that managers come and go. But he explained, we all dream to have and want that manager that last 10 to 15 years. It is very, very difficult. What do you make of that for you, Mitch? Was Poch ultimately that guy that we should have backed all those years ago?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think it doesn't take a genius to work out that he had us playing our best football over the last 5-10 years, and he had probably the best squad that we had over the last 5 to 10 years. Some of those players were fantastic. You had the Rose Walker saga and those two at their peak. You had a prime Moussa Dembele, prime Christian Eriksen, Dele Alli breaker. I'd go through the whole team and just think about how incredible it was. And I'll always come back to that interview that Poch gave sort of on the start in the beginning of the end, where he said, you can have a really nice house, but you need to put the furniture in it. He should have been backed. And, those 2 summers where we didn't sign anyone really, really hurt the squad. And you could almost argue that we're still paying for it now. There's still players from that squad that are here that arguably shouldn't be, each their own opinion. But when you've still got, the likes of Eric Dyer and Ben Davis and Harry, people out on loan like Harry Winks that are still contracted to the club and still making a living off us when they arguably should have been moved on a while ago. You can look back on it and think, well, that's where we've gone wrong, isn't it? So yeah, for me, Poch's era was the era that we were going to do it, wasn't it? Champions League final, Cup semi-finals and finals, challenging in the league for the Premier League title. I don't know when we're going to see that again, if we are. So yeah, it's kind of almost a little bit sad to look back on, but I also like to stay positive, and I'm a massive fan of Antonio Conte and what he does. So I'm hoping that we can sort of find something similar under him in the future as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, you can check out that interview with Daniel Levy. That's on Premier League Stories. I understand there'll be repeats of that interview to come. Right, what we are going to do, we are going to go for our final break of this show for our listeners on audio. Take you into that break, you're going to hear from Jamie from Leicester Fan TV, who gives you a Leicester perspective of what we should be expecting on Saturday. And we are going to turn our attention to Leicester to come. Jess, let's start with you. Look, big game for Tottenham Saturday afternoon, taking on Leicester, who, to be fair to them, they started the season in a really, really bad form under Brendan Rodgers. There was talk whether he'd even arguably keep his job. There was just something not clicking with Leicester. I mean, to be fair, they've made a couple of moves in the January transfer market to refresh their squad. They come off the back of a really good win against Aston Villa, a 4-2 win, I think it was, away from home. Just what kind of game do you think we're expecting? Always have at the King Power. What do you make of it?
Well, this is the thing. I feel like I saw some comments earlier. People were like, oh, yeah, we should smash them, blah, 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 which technically we should. But I just don't think we should underestimate them because, firstly, Spurs. Secondly, obviously, Lloris isn't there. We've lost Romero as well. And so that defensively is like quite a big thing, changing it up after a good win. James Maddison is back from injury. I don't know too much about him, but I do know that since his return, they drew 2-2 against Brighton. And then, like you said, they had that win 4-2 against Aston Villa. It's not looking, he's looking good. And then also you mentioned new signings. There was someone, Tete, is that right?
Yeah, Tete, yep. The Brazilian.
He was looking really good. And I feel like he's brand new and already a fan favourite. So we're going to need to obviously watch out for that. But it's one of those where we should win. So I back us. And I think if we play attacking like we did, we watch out for those people who are back. We've got this. We have got this.
Just get a prediction when you, Jess. What are you going to go for?
I am going to go... I want us to get 3. I want Sonny back on the score sheet. That's what I desperately want.
Oh, man, agree.
I think they might get 1. I'm going to go 3-1.
Okay, positive there from Jess, a 3-1. Pat, let's come around to you. Look, I think we always say Leicester away, never an easy ground for Tottenham. Having said that, there's been a few games we've done really, really well up there, going pretty back to the pot years, to be honest with you. But it's always a tough game. And to be fair, look, if Spurs do want to keep in top 4 contention, of course, just a point behind Newcastle going into this, they're going to have to be winning these games. I'm being honest with you, Pat. They can't really afford to drop points. How do you see it playing out for you, Pat?
Yeah, I echo everything Jess is saying. We will win the game. Let's be positive. I think we'll win the game. But Leicester, you've got to watch James Maddison, a fantastic player, someone I've always admired. This season, he's got 8 goals. I didn't realise he'd scored so many goals this season and 4 assists. So the guy's cooking. Harvey Barnes is always a goal threat as well. He's got 7 goals and 1 assist. So they've got some quality players. Jamie Vardy's definitely seen better days, but he lost to turn up against Tottenham, so we've got to watch out for him. But he might come off the bench and have a cameo appearance. But to be fair, we've got way more than enough for Leicester. I see us winning quite comfortably, dare I say, like touchwood. I think we'll beat them 4-1.
Okay.
So, Sonny to get 2 goals, because Son looked good. I was arguing with a lot of people
I agree.
on podcasts this week because they were saying, "What's going on with Son?" And I said to them, I thought Son had a good game. Like, takes basically each game on a case by case basis. Against Man City, that was the Son that we all love, running at players, being dangerous, basically being a threat. 1 or 2 decisions in the final third could have been better, but that was the Son that we know. We all want to see him get goals and assists. That didn't come, but I believe that he's back to where he should be. So, I think Son scores 2, Kane scores 2. We beat them 4-1.
Okay, love it. Mitch, it's quite interesting. At one point, we were expecting maybe Rodgers to lose his job at Leicester. They were on a horrendous run of form. I think there's actually, when you look at the reverse fixture, Spurs smashing Leicester at home and Son getting that hat-trick. There was a real feeling in between that international break that Leicester might arguably make a managerial change, but they didn't. They stuck with Rodgers. You could argue that maybe he had a big compensation package, that would have been really hard given their own issues with financial fair play. While they might have not done that, but look, they have to some degree backed them with a couple of January signings, as Jess mentioned. They look refreshed from there. And as Jess again mentioned, that Tete will be one to watch. I mean, what kind of Leicester do you think we're going to be facing at the weekend, Mitch?
I think we're facing a dangerous Leicester. I mean, I love watching us play against Leicester. There's always some really good matchups against them. I mean, I was writing live scores preview for the game at the weekend earlier in the day today, and I was just doing some research on it. I think since Leicester got back promoted to the Premier League in 2014, across the games they've played against Spurs, there's been 71 goals across it, so it's a lot. Obviously, Harry Kane hasn't scored more against a Premier League side than Leicester with 18, so I expect it to be an affair with lots of goals. I think there's always a little bit of drama up in the Midlands against them as well. I was at the game. I can't even remember if it was last season. I think it was last season now with Bergwin's winner.
Oh yeah, it was.
I was in the away end for that. That was incredible.
Did you end up falling onto the pitch with all the celebrations?
I was quite high up, but I think one fella I know ended up having his arm crushed and it broke.
Oh Jesus!
Oh wow!
But yeah, so I think.
I mean, ask me a year later whether it's worth it now. I mean, maybe you would say it was worth it now a year later, but yeah, at the time probably wasn't.
No, but it'll be a really good game, and I agree with what some of the guys in the comments are saying. Kane looks hungry for some goals. I think if I had to make a prediction, I'd go 3-2. I reckon. Okay, it's always back and forth, end-to-end games between us. Isn't it? It doesn't ever really look stable in either defence, and without Romero for us, without Lloris, and a couple of their new boys like Jess was mentioning as well, it could be quite a feisty affair. Hopefully,
yeah. Agree. I mean, something you feel's got to give. Leicester have failed to win in their last 4 home Premier League games. Meanwhile, Spurs have yet to win 3 top flight on the trot. So you do feel that something has got to give. Look, guys, I've got to say, it's been lovely having you all here. Like I say, 3 fresh debutants. We're going to hope they're going to be back with us very, very soon. We hope you enjoyed it. I know I'm being urged because Love Island has just started.
Oh, fine. The first minute's
Ricky,
fine. Nothing really happens in the first.
I know, man. I've got to say, for those of you watching Arsenal on Spurs, I've been battered over the fact that Love Island has almost been the escapism for me. Let me tell you, as a Spurs fan, everyone's needed their escapism, and Love Island's been that. Before I let these wonderful guys go, Mitch, been an absolute pleasure having you on Arsenal on Spurs for your debut. Mitch, where can everybody find you on the socials?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, yeah, pleasure, it's just at Mitch Fretton, mainly on Twitter. I took a bit of a break during January and in the new year, but I should be getting back to a bit more posting over the next few weeks. So yeah, I'm on there if anyone fancies dropping a follow.
Amazing, Mitch. We look forward to having you back with us, hopefully before the end of the season. Jess, lots of love for you here. Lots of people, I think, have come over from listening to you on radio to over here, which is interesting.
Oh, I hope so.
Where can everybody hear your dulcet tones, which is more music than football, I must just say, just to be clear. You're not doing the 5 Live commentary, Jess, are you? By any chance?
Oh, no. They haven't called me up just yet. But you know what? After today, I'm waiting for my phone to go off. I am on Saturday nights, 8 till 10 p.m. on BBC Radio London, BBC Sounds, and very early in the morning, 5 a.m. Saturday and Sunday on Radio 1. And Magic Chilled, Monday to Friday, 2 till 5. So
look at that.
Every day, you have no excuse not to hear me.
No. Out of interest, Jess, does the music change if Spurs win? Do we get more upbeat music, or is it always pretty much similar?
It's more whether I'm upbeat or not, but there we go. The music's always top form, don't worry.
Jess, been an absolute pleasure. We look forward to having you back with us, hopefully before the end of the season, if not, definitely next. Pat, I know it's been a long time coming, my bro. Lovely to have you on Last One Spurs to make your debut. I know wherever this guy normally he's on a channel somewhere fighting Spurs' corner whilst getting battered by about 6 opposition fans. So Pat, this is probably a nice bit of a chill out session for you, right?
Yeah,
I have to have a word with
nice.
Terry. I know Terry personally, so I have to just leave you be for a little bit, right?
Yeah, no, this is nice and chilled. It's been a pleasure and an honour. And obviously, like you said, I'm usually on the Football Terrace or other podcasts just fighting Spurs' corner. They're always trying to throw shade at us, and I'm here fighting. People trying to tell me Harry Kane's not world class. All his goals mean nothing. Just crazy comments. I'm here backing.
Clickbait stuff, Pat. Don't be biting, bro. Do not be biting.
But no, it's been a pleasure being on here. My name's there, or was there. So Patrick Tyrant on Twitter, Instagram. You can catch me on the Football Terrace. Premier League Unpacked, and then Best of the Rest with Saeed and all the boys. So yeah, been a pleasure, been an honour. Hope to come back soon and Jess and Mitch, it's been a pleasure as well. So yeah,
absolutely. Pat, been brilliant. Mitch, Jess, thank you so much. Guys, we are back with you. Look at lots of love for the debutants here. Lots of love for the debutants. This is what I mean. Look, say if Spurs would sign more players and have debuts like this. I'll tell you. No pressure, no pressure. But from the brilliant Mitch Fretton, from the superb Jess Iszatt, from the wonderful Pat Tyrant. Guys, we've been the last one on Spurs. We are back with you on Saturday for instant post-match reaction. Have a lovely end to your week. Keep safe, keep well, and as always, come on you Spurs.